What's up, everybody? I'm Dreadful Gooz. I'm here at Murder the Mix Studios. It's hot some motherfucker up in this bitch. And today, it's all about how to bias your amplifier. I want to apologize if I'm looking crazy. I just got into my studio and started filming. I turned the AC on, and the AC is awesome, but it takes a little bit to cool this room down. So, if I'm looking crazy, my bad. I'm very fortunate to have not one, but two Fortin amplifiers in my studio. But unfortunately, one of my amps is not working right now. My guitar player didn't realize that the speaker cabinet was not connected into the Cali, and unfortunately ended up blowing the fuse on the amp. Mike Fortin himself recommended that I change out the power tubes. So I figured now's the perfect time to rebias this thing and show you guys how to do that. Alright, so here's a list of some of the things you're gonna need. In my case, I know that at least one of the fuses is blown out. So, like Mike Fortin recommended, it's best to just change out all the fuses. So, I've got my fuses right here. Mike also recommended that I change out the power tubes, just to be safe. If the amp still doesn't work after changing the fuses and the power tubes, then I know the problem is more serious, and then he recommended that I take it to a local tech. I'm hoping this is gonna be a quick fix, so I ended up getting, also to Mike's recommendation, some EL34s by Electro Harmonics. Another thing you're gonna need is a digital multimeter. You can find these anywhere, Amazon, eBay, hardware store. They're not that expensive. I mean, this one was like, I don't know, 20 bucks. I've seen some of them even be like $7, $8 or 10. So I'll put a link to the one that I got off Amazon in case you guys wanna get the same exact one. Chances are you're gonna have to unscrew a couple of things, so having a drill makes things a lot faster. The first thing you need to know about biasing an amp, never, ever, ever put both hands inside of an amplifier while it's on. Literally, this rule can save your life. Long story short, you put two hands in here while this thing's on and running, electricity's going through your body, and there's a good chance you're gonna die. So don't do it. Don't fucking do it. Alright guys, let's flip this thing around and let's get under the hood of the Fortin Cali. Alright, so the back of the Cali is pretty simple. Foot switch, send return effects loop, your speakers, you can adjust the ohms. These are what we're going to be talking about today, and since I have to change these out, we'll also be talking about these. The Cali has three 12AX7 tubes, and luckily for us, you never have to bias preamp tubes. So, we don't have to worry about these guys. As you can see, the cabinet for the head is much bigger than the actual amplifier. The Cali is only a 50 watt amp, but it gets crazy, crazy loud. Being a 50 watt amp, you have only two power tubes, and these are the guys that we're gonna have to swap out and bias when we put in the new tubes. Now, the first thing we're gonna do, like I said, in my case, since I know the fuses are blown, I had already taken the fuses out. I'm gonna replace the fuses now, and it's really, really simple, especially on an amp like this. Alright, and just like that, fuses are changed. Alright, so now we're going to get to the actual biasing of the amp. As you can see, I've put in an IEC cable so that I can power the amp on, and this is also very important. Even though you're not going to be playing out of the amp, make sure that you have a load inside of the amp. Without a load, this thing will end up blowing the fuse again, because that's exactly what happened. This must have come out, and my guitar player didn't realize that while the amp was still on, and that caused the fuse to blow. So we want to make sure that we always have a load in the amp when we're biasing, or when the amp is just on, for that matter. Next thing we want to do is, before we turn the amp on, make sure all the volumes on the amp are down. If you really want to be crazy, just make sure every single knob is at 0. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn the amp on. Give it a few minutes to warm up before taking it off standby. All right, now that the tubes have had a chance to warm up, we're gonna break out our digital multimeter. These are really easy to set up. I've already put the battery in it. You're gonna take the red and you're gonna plug it into this guy right here. You're gonna take the black and you're gonna plug it into the common, which is the other black right here. Now that these guys are in, we're gonna set that to that little symbol right there. Real quick, some of the prongs on these multimeters come with little caps. So if it's only sticking out that much, then that means it does have a cap on it and you gotta take that out. You should have all of that sticking out because you're gonna have to put that into these slots right over here. I figured there was no point in biasing tubes that I know I needed to replace anyways. So I just turned the amp off, waited for it to cool down. Make sure you wait for the tubes to cool down. Don't just start swapping out tubes because there's still a bunch of heat and electricity running through this thing. So if you need to do anything like that, like swapping tubes and the amp was previously on, make sure you turn it off. And I generally like to wait anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how long the amp has been on. If it's only been on for a few, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, I would say, I think you should be okay at the 10-minute mark. But if you want to be 100% sure and safe, bump it up to maybe even 20 to 30 minutes. Safety first, everybody. The new tubes are in and they're all warmed up. Most amp companies, and especially the boutique builders like Mike Fortin, like to include what rating they put these tubes at from the factory. You can usually find this in the owner's manual of any amp. When I looked up the owner's manual for the Cali, I believe it's at 32 or 33 milliamps. I like to run my tubes a little bit hotter than the factory setting. So on this one, I'm not going too crazy. It's like if 32 is what it's supposed to be set at, I've got mine at 33 or max 34. Nothing too crazy. So let's take a look at our meter. We're actually pretty close, which is kind of upsetting for me because I wanted to show you guys stuff. And it looks like I really don't have to do much. I checked this one. I checked the other one. They're about the same. 35 point something and then it's 36. But I guess for the sake of this video, let me show you anyways. One of the reasons why you want to make sure your amp is biased correctly is because if you run your tubes too cold, your amp's probably going to sound like butt. It's going to sound like shit. It's going to be really weak sounding and you're not going to get any bottom end out of it. Now, if you run it too hot, you decrease the amount of headroom you have. So your clean channel is basically going to sound it's going to distort very quickly. And your high gain channels may not sound too good because they may just be overloaded. So you want to make sure that your tubes get properly biased. So like I said earlier, these are already biased pretty on point to what the other tubes were biased to, but just for the sake of the video, for example, if I'm doing this tube right here, the ratings where it should be 33, 34, but if you're putting it from the factory, it suggests 30, 32 or 33, something like that. But running a tube like this is extremely cold. And so basically, you're not really going to get much bottom end out of this amp. Now, the appropriate ratings should be, like I said, between 32, 34, something like that. And like I said, I like to set mine just a little bit hotter. So that's cool for me right there. And then we'll repeat the process on the other side. So you're going to leave the black in because that's the common. You're going to take the red and just switch it over to the other tube. Now this one again, I switched it just for the sake of the video. It's pretty cold right now, so let's get it as close as possible that we can to the other one. yeah, I think that's as close as we can get it. And after all this, your amp should be biased. Now, this amp is very easy to bias, like I said, because it has all the sections and where you put the probes in on the outside of the amp. We really don't have to open this thing up. I mean, obviously we had to take off the back piece, but we didn't have to actually get inside of the amplifier, which is in here. It's safer to do it this way. If you're an amp builder or an amp company, it's 2020. Like, this is a must-have, in my opinion, for any amplifier that is tube driven. Now, this amp is really easy to bias because there's only 2 power tubes. You bias one, you bias the other, and you're done. My Thrasher, which is sitting right underneath the Cali, has 4 tubes, in which you have to match the tubes in pairs. The cool thing about the Thrasher is that it can take multiple types of tubes. So in my Thrasher right now, I'm running everything at, I think it's 4 KT66s I have in there, but you can mix and match. So KT88s, EL34s, 6L6s, whatever you want. You just got to make sure that you look at your manual, see what the companies usually recommend, you set your desired tube at, and then you should be good to go. Not much more different than what we did here. I could go into a little bit more detail about all this stuff, but I ain't no rocket scientist. I'm just a guitar player. And even if I was, ain't nobody got time for that. So, thank you so much for watching. If you got any questions, I'll do my best to answer. So you already know, like, comment, subscribe, and follow all my social media links down below. Peace.